Life begins when you understand living women matter more than potential babies.
What is it?
What do you mean?
If it's a potential baby, what is inside of a woman?
It's a fetus?
Is it living?
No.
How can it grow if it's not living?
Actually, that's like saying if an acorn is a tree.
When does the fetus become living?
In a heated debate, a pro-choicer's arguments are dismantled by common sense. The pro-choicer insists that life begins with understanding, arguing that women's autonomy outweighs potential babies.
No.
That's actually a good question, but that line...
Yeah, of course, because you don't know it. Because it's living. It's living.
Oh, wait a second, but I got something for her.
When does this clump of cells or fetus become living?
When it can sustain
But-
its own life.
But when is that? When is the sustainability? How do you sustain life? Like, my newborns aren't sustainable. You can't just have a newborn and they just like live on their own, right?
Right.
When challenged, they struggle to define when a fetus becomes living, likening it to asking when an acorn becomes a tree. The discussion reveals the flaw in equating fetal development to self-sustaining life, highlighting that newborns also require care to survive.
It's not difficult, is it, Angelica? I mean, that is what a woman is.
I mean, I don't know why you're obsessed with defining it. Like, what is a man? Like, why do we need these arbitrary...
A man is a male, adult human. I mean, that's it.
Right, OK, I don't know that we need
These are just biological facts, but they're just facts. They're not arguable points, are they?
But I think we have a right to self-identify. And you said
As
you
what?
want to...
As what?
If
Well, hang
you would
on.
like to be a woman, you can identify as a woman. I don't know why there is such an issue around...
We've literally just seen a male rapist use that scam to get himself put into a female prison where he could attack vulnerable women inside a female prison, when even his ex-wife said it was all a scam.
Which is a terrible, very distressing, isolated incident. And I think it's easy to take that and say that means that no one can identify as a woman. And
But
that's
it's not an
that's
isolated
fair.
incident, though.
But it's
42% of trans-identifying prisoners in prison are in there for sex crimes. There's actually an advantage, evidently, to identifying as a female, because they never identify as male, because somehow male prisons seem less appealing to them. It's really weird. Anyway, but
Is it limitless, this self-identity?
It's not totally limitless.
What's the
but
limit?
when you're talking about International Women's Day, I don't know why we take the conversation around International Women's Day and make it about this.
But if anyone...
there's so many benefits.
Right, but if
to having
anyone,
a day.
according to you, can identify as a woman, anyone can, right?
I don't see a problem with
Just
someone
literally put their hand up and say, I'm a woman.
But it's not an easy thing to do, to go out into
Actually,
the
it's
world.
incredibly
It's very easy.
Incredibly easy.
You might think it's easy to say, but to decide to do that, to say
What
this
does
is
doing
who...
it involve?
Whatever that person decides, but to
Does
go
it
out
involve
into the
makeup?
world and say, I don't identify as perhaps the sex I
So
was
why
born
can't
as,
I
it's not-
identify... OK, why can't I identify as a black lesbian?
Well, firstly, I mean, it was...
I'm serious. I'm serious. If I can identify as anything without any need to prove I'm actually what that is, why can't I, on International Women's Day, say, I'm Piers Morgan, I'm a black lesbian?
I think taking it to a kind of absurd status,
I think
we're
that's
talking
what...
about quite a
With
strong
respect, I
physical
think that
change.
you'd already opened the absurdity door by saying it is limitless. You can do what you like. Anyone can say, I'm a woman. So I simply ask you, why can't I?
Piers Morgan fiercely critiques the current state of gender identity politics and body positivity. He argues that the definition of a woman should be clear-cut and based on biological facts, not self-identification.
And trying to disrupt your evening. It's abuse.
I am going to start running into vegan restaurants.
That's fine. Go
and
for
just
it. That's
shouting
your
and
right-
being
that's your
annoying
right
and
to protest,
grabbing
Piers.
tables, and so you can't eat your gruel, and just see how you lot like it.
Honestly,
I'm going to go to
Piers.
your house and chop paint
Piers.
all over it.
Piers, you've got a right to protest. Oof! You've got me another one.
Take it off your bingo.
Fantastic.
Take it off your bingo, son.
But where's the salt? Where's it?
Won't need any of this gruel.
That's it.
Let's put that
Fantastic.
to one side, but I will have a bit of steak just to...
You didn't salt it, though.
You see, all you've achieved is you've made me want to do this. Just
That's
eat a lovely...
absolutely fine. You go for it.
Do you know how many steaks he's had from my restaurant?
Yeah, a lot. But here's my point. I love eating steak. I'm not going to stop eating steak.
Yeah.
And the very last thing on earth that will stop me eating steak It's people like you with your pasty faces running into our restaurants telling us to stop eating steak.
We took LGB and then we added LGBTQIA+++, and then we included men who dress up like women and mock women like influencer Dylan Mulvaney. And then a lot of American conservatives just said, listen, we've had enough. It's okay if you're proud of your sexuality, but why do I have to be proud of your sexuality? That's where you lost a lot of folks, and we're starting to finally stand
firstly,
up
I'll
and
say
say,
Dylan
enough
is a
is
trans
enough.
woman. Dylan is a woman, so you got that wrong. And secondly,
Well, Dylan was a gay man until last year. Well, hang on. Dylan was a gay man until last year.
They've transitioned, they're a woman. I think that we lost people right at the beginning when gay people were dying in the streets because no one was looking out for us. So actually what we're doing right now is just, I wouldn't even use the word celebrating. I think pride is a protest.
Is it a bit too much? In other words, do you want to...
What does that mean? What is too much?
In other words, I think with every campaign, bringing people with you is really important, right? The moment it looks like it's just over the top, like it's everywhere you go is pride, 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 pride. Do we need to be that exuberant about it?
Are you blaming gay people for that? I mean,
no.
It's not our fault that companies...
Honestly, I don't care what sexuality anybody is. I don't think most people do anymore.
Morgan challenges the notion that anyone can identify as anything, questioning why such flexibility doesn't extend to other identities like being a black lesbian. He criticizes the absurdity he sees in some aspects of modern activism, particularly when it affects women's sports and public spaces. Morgan also tackles body positivity, arguing that celebrating obesity is dangerous and misguided.
You know, I met a general. His name was General Kane. I don't even know. Maybe he's not even on my side. Who the hell knows with these generals? You know, when I get through with this guy, Milley, I mean, how about Milley? Remember when I walked to the church, proudly walked to the church, that the protesters, they tried to burn it down, but I walked to the church, protesters out there, and Milley was walking with me. And the next day, the radical left media starts calling, you shouldn't have walked, you shouldn't have walked. Instead of saying, I'm proud to walk with my president, not because it's me, because of the office. Instead of saying that, he wanted to apologize for walking with the president of the United States. And I said, this guy doesn't have what it takes. And you're seeing that now, because the worst decisions I've ever seen. That's, again, why I put the patent. I just remembered it as I was coming over here. I said, get that clip quickly. The people of Alabama understand that clip. Do you think that...
In a recent viral moment, Donald Trump criticized the concept of being woke during a speech, expressing his disdain for what he views as a cultural shift. He recounted a story about meeting General Milley and how he was criticized for walking to a church with Trump amidst protests.
Let me ask you, do you think that General Patton was woke? I don't think so. What do you think, Mike? Mike, was he woke? I don't think so. I don't think he was too woke. He was the exact opposite. You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. It's true. Look at what's happening.
Trump contrasted this with the actions of historical figures like General Patton, asserting that they were not woke. He argued that the woke mindset is indicative of failure, emphasizing that everything woke turns to shit. Trump's remarks were met with applause, reflecting his audience's agreement with his perspective on modern cultural issues.
You've seen how this has got progressively more, let's say, the world has got progressively more woke. I think algorithms and Twitter...
The world has moved from being woke
right, okay, to
by the original...
Right.
I think that most people in the 60s, 70s and 80s wanted to see better racial equality and social equality. Most people. But that's what the original definition of woke was. The modern day woke is nothing to do with that. The modern day woke is a form of fascism.
Okay, so
you will abide by our rules or you get destroyed. That's the difference to me.
So the world has got more of this modern day wokeism, right? And I've seen it on social media, the way the algorithms work as well. They show you more of the same. They keep reinforcing you. Then because you build an audience of the same people, they clap more when you say a certain thing.
Yes,
kind of reinforces
you preach to your choir.
Yeah,
you know, the analogy I would use. You go back 2,000 years. We lived in tribes.
Yeah, that's right in your book. Yeah,
right. And I told the story. You never used to come out of your tribe. So everyone in the tribe would look the same attitudes, eat the same food, drink the same drink, same senses of humor, because you never moved out.
Piers Morgan argues that modern woke culture has deviated from its original intent of promoting racial and social equality. He describes today's wokeism as a form of fascism where dissenting opinions are met with hostility and cancellation. Morgan highlights how social media algorithms reinforce echo chambers, exacerbating divisions
of this group of people. And then people began to move out of their tribes and meet other tribes who dressed differently, thought differently, laughed at different things, maybe spoke differently. And both tribes in that moment decided the only answer to this was to kill each other. Well, that's where we've gone back to.
Are you optimistic?
Not really, no.
So this is what I wanted to say is your antidote for this new wokeism is to lead and to create a counter-narrative, which is what you're doing with your new show, Piers Morgan Uncensored. It's what you did with your book as well. Are you optimistic deeply that will win?
Well, let me ask you a question. So I'm described as highly controversial, right? I've been called all sorts of names. People say that things I say are outrageous. When you read my book, how many times did you stop and think, well, that's outrageous?
No, I didn't really disagree with anything.
Right. So that's my point. I don't think I'm the controversial one.
Well,
I think I come at this from a reasonably common sense
in your book,
perspective.
I didn't disagree with you at all. Because you were talking about things like popularism and liberalism and how it's changed. I completely agree. I think I used to identify as being on the left. Now I don't.
He likens the current state to ancient tribalism, where different tribes would clash due to their differences.
Because they're nuts, a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot of it is absolutely nuts. I also don't really identify with being on the right either, because they're nuts
I agree.
as well.
I agree.
So I find myself in this
You get
middle
nuts
point.
on both sides, and we're moving to the extremities.
But I'll get cancelled from both sides because I don't wear the football kit of either.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
So I want to bring back a more consensus-related society, where you reach points of agreement through debate, and you don't try and shame or cancel each other for having different opinions, because that's at the core of this. You know, they call themselves liberals. They're not liberal. Liberalism isn't about an inability to tolerate other opinions. It's the opposite, right? You're supposed to tolerate and respect other opinions and agree to disagree. We've lost this in society because a small group of people, but very vocal and very angry about everything all the time, they are driving an agenda which, if we go down that road, will be the end of a democratic society as we know it. So I see myself humbly as trying to defend democracy. Genuinely. I know, and humility is not something that comes naturally to me, but genuinely trying to defend what democracy really is and trying to educate these wokies about what real liberalism is, what democracy actually means, what free speech means. Free speech is not about you in an echo chamber all agreeing with each other. As Churchill said, free speech is about listening to views you just don't agree with, but allowing people to have different views.
Morgan advocates for a return to a more tolerant, consensus-driven society, emphasizing that true liberalism involves respecting diverse viewpoints and engaging in constructive debate rather than shaming or cancelling those with differing opinions.
After a woman has been pregnant for 6 weeks is not a return to the Dark Ages. What's your answer?
My answer is something called science. Human life exists at conception. It ought to be protected. Now, back to my question to you. You purport to be an objective journalist. BBC purports to be an objective down-the-middle network. It obviously is not. It never has been. And you, as a journalist, are proceeding to call one side of the political aisle ignorant, barbaric, and sending us back to the Dark Ages. Why don't you just say that you're on the left? Is this so hard for you? Why can't you just be honest? Seriously, it's a serious question.
Mr. Shapiro, if you only knew how ridiculous that statement is, you wouldn't have said it. I just asked you a question.
And I asked you a question. You failed to answer a single one of mine. Frankly, I find this whole thing a waste of time. If you want to read the book and critique the book, why don't you read and critique the book? If you want to critique me, you can think whatever you want of me.
Why don't you
frankly,
just try and
I don't
answer
care.
the
I don't frankly give a damn what you think of me since I've never heard of you.
And I've never heard of you until I briefed myself for this. But that's not the issue. You have a new book out, and it's an interesting book.
But my point is, your book claims that
Well, it'd be
society...
nice if you would quote it from time to time.
Your book is... Well, actually, I've done so several times, and I'm about to do so again, if you would let me just finish the question. Your book
frankly, I don't
claims
think
that society
honestly,
is turning its back
sir,
on Judeo-Christian values.
Yeah,
What are
considering
those values?
considering
what are the values it's turning its back on?
I'm not inclined to continue an interview with a person as badly motivated as you as an interviewer. So I think we're done here. I appreciate your time, sir.
All right.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you for your time and for showing that anger is not part of American political discourse. Now, Mr. Shapiro.
Andrew Neil confronted Ben Shapiro on his stance regarding abortion bans. Neil questioned Shapiro's claim that a 6-week abortion ban isn't a regression, pressing him to address perceived biases at the BBC and his own book's arguments about society abandoning Judeo-Christian values.